From Turner Home Entertainment, important issues of our time, explored in depth and presented up close in these hard-hitting CNN videos from the award-winning Special Reports team.
About half the households in the United States have guns, some 200 million firearms.
Pressing issues like the arms race on America's streets, hosted by Emmy Award-winning national correspondent Bonnie Anderson.
It costs $1 billion a year to treat the victims of gunshot wounds in the United States.
Get on your knees.
If the police could protect you, there wouldn't be any robberies, there wouldn't be any murders, there wouldn't be any shootings.
We buy guns to be safer. In reality, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Controversial issues like the battered woman defense.
Experts estimate half of all women will experience violence during their marriage.
I mean, he held me down and he made me have sex with him.
In Till Death Do Us Part, from Cable Ace Award-winning senior correspondent Larry Lamont.
The failure of police to help women when they first report abuse causes fights in the home to escalate.
He just kept grabbing and yanking and told me to just shut up because he didn't want to hear.
There's a connection that I made with sexuality and violence.
What happens when things go too far?
My head has been put through a wall. I have a black and blue on my knee.
Find out from women who were pushed beyond the edge.
I still killed a man, and I'm still gonna have to live with it.
Economic issues like the changing job market, work in progress.
No one in this country right now has job security. There is no job security.
We're trying to get fewer people to do more work. If our workers aren't going to do it, then the workers overseas are going to do it.
Hosted by Cable Ace Award-winning senior correspondent Stephen Frazier.
The future may have arrived, but it's not what we had in mind. We thought computers and other technologies would give us more time off. Instead, computers invade our private lives.
In a situation where your work can go with you, it has the potential for taking over your entire life.
Disturbing issues like murder by number, serial killers driven by an obsession and nearly impossible to catch, the nurse's aide, the babysitter, the next-door neighbor, ordinary people leading deadly secret lives. Social issues like beyond the glass ceiling. Women make up almost 50% of the American workforce, yet only fill 1 out of every 20 executive positions. Why are they still not rising to the top? Environmental issues like the people bomb. Nearly 5.5 billion people live on this planet. Before the end of the next century, that number will triple. Can the Earth's limited resources sustain a population spiraling out of control? Tackling issues like these with the quality and depth that only CNN can provide. Telling it like it is on CNN Video.
It is a simple equation. Criminals use more powerful guns. The police escalate to keep up, and law-abiding citizens fight firepower with firepower. There's an arms race on America's streets. An epidemic of gun violence is sweeping the United States. Compared to other industrialized countries, American cities are combat zones. About 14,000 gun homicides a year, and hundreds of thousands wounded or threatened by thugs with guns. Is it because firearms are so easy to get, or because criminals are not being jailed and severely punished? No matter where you stand on these questions, one thing is clear. The arms race is costing us dearly in pints of blood, tears of grief, and billions of dollars. In one currency or another, we all pay.
code yellow, major trauma. Code yellow, major trauma. Code yellow, major trauma.
What is it?
GSW to the chest.
A gunshot wound.
Well, time to go to work. Get the rib spread in here.
Coming up.
Let me going in the tube.
Give me a second tray. Tomorrow, second cardiac massage tray.
Every day, around the clock, the life and death dramas of urban America play out at D.C. General Hospital.
Do we have cross-match blood?
Cross-match is done. We have flatline, gentlemen. We have a pressure of 125.
Tomorrow, set up the internal.
It is one of the nation's busiest trauma centers, where practiced hands try to patch together the soldiers and civilians wounded in city warfare.
Release this, please. Okay. Do we have anything? We have nothing on main monitor, I think.
All clear?
Go. Yeah.
More than half of the nearly 1,000 people shot in Washington each year are brought here, many critically wounded.
We are still flatline,
Time? 9:44.
It costs $1 billion a year to treat the victims of gunshot wounds in the United States. High-tech intensive care, which they often need, is very expensive. And since 80% of the patients do not have private medical insurance, taxpayers pick up much of that bill. So in other words, even if you live in a low-crime neighborhood, you still pay the price for the arms race on America's streets.
Sylvia, give me a trauma tray.
This is the cost of what people think is the right to bear arms. That's a conflict that people will not really face up to. Is that if you want all these guns out here, then you should be ready to pay the bill.
The sharp rise in gunshot violence was triggered by the urban epidemic of crack and crime in the late 1980s. But now, not only has the number of gunshot cases increased, there's also been a startling change in the nature of the wounds. More people are being treated for multiple gunshots.
I heard the shots, it was so many. I feel them going through my shirt too. That's why I had all the holes in my shirt. I was just rolling on the ground. How many times I got shot this time?
We got 3 gunshot wounds? At least 3. At least 3.
6. We're for the mouth for 2 weeks.
So you've had 6 gunshot wounds in your life. And how old are you?
18.
18.
The increase of multiple wounds coincides with greater firepower on the streets. 5 years ago, most guns confiscated by the D.C. police and test-fired in their ballistics lab were revolvers, usually 6-shooters. Today, the majority are semi-automatic pistols. Some, like this Tech 9, can hold 30 rounds or more. With so much ammunition, chances are greater more bullets will find their mark. Ryland Epps admits he's dealt drugs. This was his 3rd multiple shooting in less than 3 months.
The whole time I was just like, not again. I was just in so much pain because they was working on me and stuff. I was just hurting.
Did you think you might die?
I didn't really know how bad my injuries was, so I couldn't tell at the moment. I was just hoping, you know, they do the best they can for me.
Do you think you're lucky?
Yeah. I do think I'm lucky.
Lucky because, unlike knife wounds, a bullet's path is unpredictable.
So what happened was this bullet traveled across the back and is lodged over here. Okay? Now, another angle could have what? Could have gone through the spine. He would have come in paralyzed. Or the aorta or the heart would have been hit and he would be dead.
In fact, gun homicides are the biggest cause of death for young black males in this country. For black teens, the rate nearly tripled between 1985 and 1990. For white teenagers, it doubled.
I just heard like a rack of gunfire.
The streets, says Epps, are dangerous, but he admits he is part of that cycle of violence. Did you have a weapon on you?
Yes, at the time I did.
Where did you get the gun?
I bought it off the streets.
For how much?
About $150. pulled it off the streets.
That was recovered in 4D?
Yeah.
The sale of handguns is banned in D.C., but like most U.S. cities, there's a thriving underground market. Guns are traded among criminals, bought out of state and smuggled in, and stolen in residential burglaries.
It's safe. Okay?
As more people across the country join the arms race for self-protection, FBI crime statistics show a steady increase in the number of guns reported stolen. Over the past 10 years, 1.7 million firearms. Estimated value, more than $1 billion. And many end up in the hands of criminals.
We live in this vicious circle where we're afraid of guns, we buy guns to be safer. In reality, that's like throwing gasoline on a fire. It only makes the situation worse.
W.W. Johnson knows that situation firsthand. As a Washington, D.C. police officer for 20 years, Johnson's beat in Lincoln Heights was one of the deadliest. He's retired now, but still spends much of his time there, helping youngsters in trouble, so far becoming a foster parent to 16 of them.
When I tell a kid, look, you can come live here and stay in this house, I'm saying, look, I don't get paid for this, so you owe me something. You owe me to go to school. You owe me to try to do positive things, and that's what I'm looking for.
Under Johnson's supervision, 14-year-old David recently won his school's Most Improved Student Award. 3 years ago, he was a gun-toting drug dealer, clearing $50 to $100 a night. What kind of guns could you see on the street?
I can see all types.
Like what?
Like Uzis, Tech-9, AK-47s, and handguns and stuff.
What kind of handguns?
Pistols, 9mm, 45, Glocks, all of them.
You can recognize them just by looking at them?
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you could first recognize handguns and rifles?
12.
If I said I needed a gun right now, how soon could you have one for me?
About an hour.
And how much would it cost me?
You talking about the half? I don't got, they won't get the kit for me to use, they won't charge me nothing.
But if I want to have one?
If I go get it, they probably charge about 100 or 150.
Where are the other kids who were selling drugs with you?
Some of them dead, and some of them locked up. Some of them still selling.
Do they ever try to get you to sell again?
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them?
They be saying nah.
Why?
Because I just can't do it. I don't got no feel for it no more. Because everybody getting killed and stuff, I don't want to get killed.
Johnson believes David has escaped the drug violence for now, but doesn't for a moment think the young boy is safe. Any day, the sex cop fears, David could become a victim of an alarming new trend. Youth using guns to settle minor disputes.
I think selling drugs is wrong.
Johnson has reason to be afraid. In 1991, his 16-year-old foster son Elijah, who went from truant to honor roll student, was shot to death by a neighborhood teenager over a simple misunderstanding.
I had seen hysterical mothers 1,000 times, but it never clicked in or kicked in as to what a hysterical mother was until that hysterical mother was my wife. And when that person was no longer an unidentified Negro male or person, when that person took on the face of Elijah, I understood what death was.
At D.C. General, a church choir urges young survivors to abandon their arms race.
Don't you get weary, there's a great camp meeting in the promised land.
And doctors call for a ceasefire.
Okay, take away the gunshot wounds. I don't need them to do what I do. There are plenty other problems to solve. Okay, I really want someone to put me out of business, period.
But the pleas ricochet through the nation's capital, unanswered.
So you ever been shot before?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
When? When?
About 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
And you're how old right now?
19.
So you were shot when you were 16?
Yes.
Tomorrow and the next day, there will be new patients with new wounds, and doctors will again confront their limitations. They can treat only the symptoms of the arms race, not the disease.
Code yellow, major trauma. Code yellow, major trauma.
They're walking away, man. Show me your hand!
On the front lines.
Everybody down. Now.
The nightly battle for America's inner city streets.
Hey! Don't fucking run,
You
man.
better not. Is fought neighborhood by neighborhood.
Hey! Reaching your dick.
Block by block.
We're gonna kill you, man. You better stop! You better stop!
It's a war against drugs.
That's cocaine.
And with drugs, there's money.
Another 2,000 going in the bag.
And where there's money, there are guns.
Chief, you got enough ammunition to start a war. Where's the gun at?
For the police, the streets have never been more dangerous. They're up against more firepower than ever before and more people willing to use it. So some cities are taking on drug dealers with urban commando teams with intimidating names, like Crash, Dart, TNT, and in Atlanta, Red Dog.
Show me hands, get on your knees. Get on your knees. Get on
The name comes from a tactical maneuver in football, an all-out assault against the quarterback.
You blitz your drug dealers on the street. You just come from no place and you swoop down and you deal with the dopers.
Get the car, the truck! Get this man right there. Get him, dude. What do you need?
They found these weapons stashed in some bushes moments after a public housing resident tipped them off.
Yeah, this is a .45 automatic, and this is a .38 revolver.
But it's not always so simple.
The key is getting in without being seen and set up.
Many drug dealers post lookouts for the police, so Red Dogs crawl through overgrown vacant lots to sneak up on them. This team has been spotted. Someone takes a shot at them, then slips away in the darkness. No one is hurt this time. But according to FBI statistics, the number of police injured in gun assaults more than doubled in the last 10 years. In December '91, Atlanta police officer Niles Johansson was shot to death patrolling a high-crime neighborhood.
We're gonna have to move back behind the emergency vehicle from Grady.
A few months later, Officer Randy Shapani was killed by a teenager in a stolen car. The boy shot Shapani in the face, point blank, with a stolen gun.
The message to the troops is that we've got to hang on in there. These are difficult times for not only our police department, but for Atlanta and the nation.
We've taken, from my count, about 25 weapons so far this month.
With Red Dog's help, Atlanta police confiscated about 3,500 firearms last year, twice as many as they did 10 years ago.
Okay, gentlemen, let's go to work.
The guns from the street are locked in a vault, deadly reminders of the increasing firepower police and citizens face every day.
Trafficking in cocaine, that's a big charge there.
Semi-automatic pistols are especially popular, including some $250 knockoffs of submachine guns.
If you run out of ammunition in one magazine, you just push this lever, it comes out, you flip the other one over, and it goes right back in, so you got 30 more rounds to go.
Cheap small caliber weapons are also widely used, although the federal government banned the importation of so-called Saturday night specials in 1968. There's no law against making them here.
Carrying it in the hip pocket is the best place because it looks like a wallet sticking out. Nobody would even suspect that you have it. And again, you know, anybody with a moderate-sized hand can cover one up, walk into a store like this and have it instantly ready to do the robbery probably the way they did it here.
Criminals still use sawed-off shotguns, but for more firepower, there's the street sweeper. It holds 12 shotgun shells and automatically reloads each time it's fired.
If they know you have one, and they will know you have one, it's good insurance. It keeps people away from you.
What's the reputation?
Just that it's lethal, and that it spreads well and it shoots fast, and it's easy to conceal. With this strap, the gun can be carried, especially in the wintertime, over the shoulder, under an overcoat, and it's ready for action in just a second.
With so many guns in criminal hands, police in most cities have also joined the arms race, replacing their 6-shot revolvers with 9mm semi-automatic pistols, which hold up to 16 rounds. But for many officers, even that's not enough. They carry a second gun.
Just in case. Never noticed my backup.
Although Red Dogs usually work in 3- or 4-member teams, they sometimes feel outgunned. After stopping this car for a traffic violation, for example, they found a cheap .45 caliber pistol.
The only problem if he's shooting at us, it's probably going to work. And it's going to do more damage than our little bullets. You can imagine a hole coming in that big or that big. Which one would you rather have coming at you?
Which is yours?
The small one.
And which is his?
The big one.
The guns taken from criminals are eventually melted down. For some in law enforcement, a small but satisfying victory. But for others who put their lives on the line night after night, it is also a symbol of defeat.
Go to your knees.
With so much poverty, drugs, and violence, they simply see no end to the arms race on America's streets.
And you got a weapon, knives, needles, syringes on you, tell us.
KTRH News Time, 8:10.
Friends of a Southeast Houston used car dealer murdered Tuesday night. One
Gang is responsible for the brutal murders of 2 young girls. If you're coming in on the west side, the Katy Freeway now slowing from the toll.
A typical summer morning in Houston, Texas.
Many a road user in the Indian capital has come to fear these buses.
Across the city, residents like Howard Lee get ready for work. His routine includes brushing his teeth and breaking Texas law by tucking his .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol into his belt before heading into rush hour traffic.
The police can't protect you. They can't be everywhere. I mean, if the police could protect you, there wouldn't be any robberies, there wouldn't be any murders, there wouldn't be any shootings. They can't do it.
A competitive marksman, Lee wants to level the playing field if someone attacks him.
I figure that if I get my hand on my gun, I've got at least an even chance of surviving.
Each year, about 3,500 people die from gunshot wounds in Texas. That's more than are killed in motor vehicle accidents. This level of firearms violence has triggered a heated and often emotional battle over whether Texans should have the legal right to carry concealed weapons. At issue, would a gun-toting populace be a force for good or evil? For Susanna Gracia, the answer is painfully clear. 2 years ago, Gracia and her parents were having lunch at Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen, Texas, when a gunman drove his truck through the window, got out, and began methodically executing people.
As he began working his way toward us, I thought, I got him, because I always carried a gun in my purse. I had the perfect place to prop my arm. The man was standing up. Everybody else in the cafeteria was down.
But on this day, Gracia did not have her gun with her. She knew carrying it was illegal, and if caught, she could lose her chiropractor's license. To her horror, the gunman turned, aimed one of his 2 semi-automatic pistols at Gracia's father, and fired into his chest. Her mother crawled over to him and cradled his head, an easy target for the shooter.
She stayed with my father, and he walked over to her, pointed the gun at her head, and she looked up at him and put her head down, and he shot her.
23 innocent people died in the massacre, the worst in U.S. history. Gracia escaped unharmed, but believes she could have ended the carnage sooner if she'd been allowed to carry her gun. How early on in his shooting spree do you think you could have stopped him?
4 or 5 minutes. A lot of people still would have died.
But you feel a lot would have lived?
My parents would have lived.
Does that make you angry?
It makes me very, very angry. My dominant emotion has been anger ever since this.
This is one of his first little school pictures, but he looked...
Paula Reyes is also angry for a different reason. Her 14-year-old son, Michael, was killed by a teenager using a concealed gun his mother kept illegally in her car for self-protection.
I wanted to see him graduate. I wanted to see him drive a car, get a senior ring, go to the prom. He never got to do any of that, and I never got to enjoy it with him.
You feel cheated?
Oh, I feel robbed. Still can't believe it.
The lesson, says Reyes, even a gun kept with good intentions can lead to tragedy.
I guess my son taught me love more than anything else. And in death, he still made me proud. And there's not a day that goes by that he still doesn't show me his love.
We're going to get this law passed, people. One of these days.
There was a proposed concealed weapons bill in Texas. It failed. But firearms instructor Diane Lawson believes so strongly one will pass, she's already teaching students how to carry a gun for self-defense.
Okay, I've got her. Right, exactly.
The proposed law called for applicants to undergo a criminal background check, make their medical records available to the state, and take a 15-hour training course.
We don't need quite as much as law enforcement gets because we're not out there every day walking into danger deliberately like law enforcement is.
But many police chiefs worry that armed civilians with little training could be dangerous. By comparison, Houston police cadets undergo 80 hours of comprehensive firearms instruction. They are psychologically screened and randomly drug tested. Their backgrounds are investigated and they must pass a lie detector test. As rookies, they ride with a supervisor for the first 6 months and then have to prove they're proficient with a gun every year.
I'm confident as you can be in another human being that they will probably, although not always, make the right decision. The thing that was proposed in the Texas statute did not give me any of those confidences.
33 states routinely issue permits for concealed weapons, including 8 that joined the list in the past 10 years.
What if I get caught with it in my car?
So far, there are few recorded instances of permit carriers misusing their guns. Still, some foes of the conceal and carry movement say such a law in Texas would only fuel further violence, especially in neighborhoods with disproportionately more crime.
I have seen and I have attended too many funerals watching our babies, and that's what I call them, dying at the hands of violent weapons. I would much rather teach them problem resolution, knowing how to solve your problems without weapons and guns.
And when that happens, the person who's trying to do the reasoning is the one who ends up on the slab in the morgue.
State Representative Ron Wilson co-sponsored the failed concealed weapons bill and vows he's not giving up.
My position is, if somebody's going to die in a confrontation like that, let's let it be the bad guy for a change.
The issue is so complicated, even the experts disagree. One criminologist estimates Americans successfully use firearms to protect themselves and their property several 100,000 times a year, almost as often as criminals use guns.
Those who use guns in self-defense are less likely to be hurt, and in connection with robberies, less likely to lose property than victims who either do not resist at all or who resist but without a gun.
But other social scientists say criminals will be more likely to use force if they think their victims are armed.
It's an advertisement to criminals that they're dangerous, and that a rational criminal would then carry a gun himself in committing crimes, perhaps be a little bit more willing to shoot than would otherwise be the case.
It's all for you, baby. It's all for you.
Paula Reyes, whose son was killed by another teenager, is channeling her grief by lobbying against concealed weapons.
I think it's insane. We have burglar alarms on our cars. We have house alarms to keep people out. We have fences up. What more? Now it's going to be carrying a gun? What do we do when we send our 10-year-olds to school and there's so many guns in school? Do we put one in their lunchbox? Is that the way that we want to have the rest of our lives, to raise our children?
But to Susanna Gracia, who survived the massacre at Luby's, it is simply too late to restrict handguns.
I can't believe that anybody's so idealistic that they can say, well, if we make this illegal, that bad man isn't going to get a gun. It's already illegal to murder.
Hola. ¿Cómo está? Everything all right?
With more police on the street in Houston, crime is down 17%. But for many residents, that's still not enough to restore faith in the criminal justice system, with its overburdened courts and overcrowded prisons.
The youngest of 16s charged with the brutal slayings of 2 Houston girls last week.
Juveniles in the area pointing guns, looking for someone.
The debate will continue as long as today's news
Funeral services were held today for one of the 2 girls.
was yesterday's call for help.
One of them's found with a gun. They ran towards the south.
We got a parole violator in Roger Central.
They are the nation's gun police, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. ATF has a successful and colorful crime-fighting history, harking back to the days when bootleggers and gangsters were stopped in their tracks.
This time a brewery on South State Street, said to belong to Al Capone.
The most famous of those revenue agents was Elliot Ness, immortalized in Hollywood as the leader of the Untouchables.
Federal officer, you're under arrest for violations of the Volstead Act.
The modern-day Untouchables are proud they seize nearly 20,000 illegal guns each year. Still, the arms race on America's streets continues. In fact, ATF officials admit that given their strict political and financial constraints, they can't prevent gun trafficking. Agents can't even stop more than just a fraction of the people in this nation who violate gun laws. It is so easy to become a federally licensed gun dealer, a dog was once issued a permit. With licenses costing a mere $10 a year, there are now 286,000 dealers, more gun dealers than gas stations. And who is supposed to monitor them? Only 250 ATF inspectors.
It's far more than we can effectively regulate with the resources that we have.
The overload means 94% of America's gun dealers are not inspected on a yearly basis. So ATF has no way of knowing who is selling what to whom.
It concerns me in that I know that we could do a better job if there were other systems in place.
If other systems were in place, ATF might have caught gun dealer Jack Haynes before it was too late. He was charged with altering serial numbers on 6,000 guns to make tracing difficult, and then reselling them from his rural Tennessee home.
He has altered probably more serial numbers on more guns than any single person that has been brought to our attention.
Haynes came to ATF's attention by sheer luck. A tip that somebody at this Newton, North Carolina gas station was selling guns to teenagers. ATF agents made undercover buys and found guns with bogus serial numbers. Forensic technicians at the agency's lab then used chemicals to restore the original markings.
Slightly to the right of the fourth 4 is a 5, and then under the 5 is a 2.
Finally, with valid serial numbers, ATF was able to trace the guns from the manufacturer to Jack Haynes.
There ain't no paper nowhere. They can't even be traced back to the factory.
There were more undercover buys, this time from Haynes himself.
I get them, I sell them, you get them, you sell them. The next man gets caught, I don't give a damn. Ain't no way he can say I got them.
Eventually, Haynes was indicted and pleaded guilty to violating federal conspiracy law. But could his crime have been prevented or stopped earlier? Why didn't ATF realize that in a town of 5,000 people, one dealer was importing 6,000 guns?
With the current technology that we have no way of knowing that information.
ATF once tried to computerize records of gun sales to track the flow of firearms from manufacturers to dealers. In 1978, it asked Congress for $5 million for the project. But the National Rifle Association fought the proposal, calling it a step toward national gun registration, which it staunchly opposes. In the face of massive political pressure, Congress turned down ATF's request.
Congress not only didn't give us the money that we asked for to put the computerization of the records into place, but they actually reduced our operating budget by the same amount. So that in effect, we took a $5 million hit from our appropriations for that year.
So while criminals are getting more sophisticated, ATF is stuck with its archaic methods. Weapons tracing, which is crucial to spotting gun trafficking, is done the old-fashioned way, by hand. Manually scrolling through microfilmed records of gun sales, time-consuming phone calls, or sorting through 60 million documents warehoused in boxes. The process is so cumbersome, 60% of ATF's gun traces dead end in failure. Let's say an agent calls up and says, listen, I've been keeping my eye on a certain gangster. His name is Al Capone. Can you tell me if any weapons have ever been traced to Al Capone?
No, I can't. No, without manually looking through all those records.
60 million?
Yeah, 60. The one I have here is 60 million, or even the ones we trace, which would be the crime guns. I'd say it would be 50, 60,000 a year. I'd have to look through the records we have on file, about 200,000 manually.
The system is so primitive, ATF missed earlier clues Jack Haynes might be breaking the law. On 5 separate occasions in 1992, guns involved in criminal investigations were traced to him. Each time, tracing clerks phoned Haynes from Washington and asked to whom he had sold the gun. And each time, according to court documents, Haynes had a different excuse for not knowing the answer. A fire destroyed his records. He lost the records. The guns were stolen, and so on. ATF officials say if they had spotted the pattern, they would have inspected Haynes's business.
I think that it would have prevented it simply because we would have been there and we would have been asking the right questions.
But remember, ATF's system does not keep a tally of what the tracers find. And if 5 traces are done for weapons involved with crimes that lead to this dealer, it does not come up on your...
Exactly. It does not come up because my system is, it's almost like a filing cabinet. How many times you say, I got it in this filing cabinet, I just can't find it.
And there could be other situations like that in the country, and you just don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack Haynes's operation has been shut down, but almost all of the 6,000 guns he sold are still in circulation.
I expect to see those guns used in crimes of violence, those that we did not recover. Those guns will be used to commit a crime somewhere in this country.
The legacy of this case goes beyond Jack Haynes. It reignites politically explosive questions. How much gun regulation is too much? And is Congress under so much pressure from the gun lobby that it has handcuffed the nation's gun police?
There's the problem that you wrestle with. How do you let those people who don't hurt anybody with guns have free rein to weapons, and at the same time try to do something about those people who misuse guns? And that's I don't have answers for that.
It is forged and machined with painstaking precision. carefully ground and polished. Some 80 parts, steel and aluminum, assembled by skilled hands into a thing of passion, sport, and terror. The focus of a fiery debate.
How many of you children in here know someone in your neighborhoods who have been shot by guns? Raise your hands and keep them up so that your parents and teachers can see them.
Gun violence is so widespread, both sides of the gun control controversy want to get tough on criminals. But on virtually every other gun-related issue, they're sharply divided. People who believe easy access to firearms leads to more deaths versus those who claim regulation only hurts law-abiding citizens who want to defend themselves.
All right, people, the voters are screaming about violent crime. What are we going to tell them?
It is a no-holds-barred battle being waged in the court of public opinion, with scare tactics, emotional ads that hit below the belt, hot language.
Stop giving me the facts and start giving me headlines.
How about another gun control law?
So my gun control plan to ban these guns will break the back of violent crime and rid our streets of violent criminals. Do we have any questions?
Don't let politicians get away with murder.
They're used to kill or injure folks like you and me and police officers.
And it's always the other side that's fighting dirty.
Why, NRA?
Handgun Control Incorporated is the largest group lobbying for firearms regulation, with 360,000 members and a $7 million budget. Its chairperson is Sarah Brady, whose husband James was critically wounded by a bullet meant for President Reagan. Mrs. Brady calls ads like this, in which her opponents compare her to Hitler, hyperbole of the wildest nature. Unfair?
Unfair, sure.
How do you then justify this ad, in which you're also using another symbol of evil, where you're comparing NRA members to the Klan?
Because they absolutely, they lobby for that.
Is that not unfair, though? Is that not hyperbole? Are
I
all
don't
NRA
think so.
members
No.
Klansmen?
No, but they're bored. I mean, they're not Klansmen, but that is meant to show that who are we arming when we arm, sell weapons like this.
On the other side, the National Rifle Association, 3 million members and a budget of more than $100 million. In this fundraising letter, the NRA charges the anti-gun lobby is selling hate by portraying gun owners as nuts and extremists, all part of a smear campaign. But in another letter, the NRA uses the same tactics it condemns, describing gun control supporters as fanatics, crazies, a sick and determined bunch.
The fact is, we're saying, hey, these people want to take away your rights, stand up for what you believe in.
What you're saying is these people are fanatics, these people are crazies, these people are sick. Isn't that a smear campaign?
We'd all be better off if we could get away from the rhetoric and focus on the facts.
As Congress considers the major gun control bills on its agenda, there are, in fact, compelling arguments on both sides. The issues are so complex that slick rhetoric and catchy slogans don't even begin to resolve them. After 6 years of intense debate, the Brady bill passed last fall and was signed into law. It's a compromise that imposes a 5-day waiting period on handgun sales to allow a police background check on the buyer. The waiting period will eventually be replaced with a computerized instant check.
The background check obviously will begin to weed out fugitives, felons, kids, drug addicts, illegal aliens, those who have been adjudicated mentally ill, from purchasing guns over the counter. It will also begin to cut down on the size of the black market.
About 5 out of 6 of the firearms these men ever come into possession of are obtained through informal, off-the-record, swap-and-trade type transactions. So only about 1 in 6, even then, would have been potentially regulatable by some kind of waiting period imposed at the point of retail sale.
Congress is also debating whether to go a step further to ban so-called assault weapons, Some imports are already forbidden. At issue are the semi-automatic civilian versions of the fully automatic weapons used by the military. Their ammunition is no more powerful than those used in other guns, but their high-capacity magazines give them tremendous killing power.
There are not that many of them out there yet, but people are buying them in record numbers. They're sort of the sexy gun around. And we don't want to wait until every household has one, because they are dangerous. They have absolutely no legitimate purpose. None. Zero. Nobody needs an assault weapon.
It's not a question of need. It's a question of what's wrong with someone having something. I mean, this is a free country. People can have whatever they want. The fact is...
Any kind of weapon they want?
Any type of traditional firearm, NRA supports honest people being able to own under the Constitution. And semi-automatic, self-loading firearms are about as mainstream traditional firearm as you can possibly get in this country.
A more far-reaching proposal calls for a ban on the future sale of all handguns, which are used in the vast majority of homicides and suicides.
The gun culture has created nothing but death and violence for us. It has not created a safer society, it has not created a saner society, but it's in fact destroyed much of our society, and the time has come to say we don't want guns on the streets anymore.
The fact is, you're not going to solve crime by a ban that only law-abiding people obey. Criminals make their living by rape, robbing, murdering, and stealing. They'll find a way around a gun law.
For now, conventional wisdom says, for the first time, gun control forces have the momentum. Polls show an overwhelming percentage of U.S. citizens favors more regulation. Handgun Control Incorporated has won recent victories in several state legislatures and has a friend in the White House.
It used to be that when you voted against the NRA, you paid a political price. Now, if you vote with the NRA, you're also paying a political price because the public is just fed up.
Good morning, NRA. Can I help you?
But the NRA has added 600,000 new members in recent months, enough that key players on Capitol Hill still respect its clout.
They're somebody to reckon with politically. Got a lot of money, they got a tremendous mailing organization, and they got some real zealots in there as their leaders.
So as lobbying forces court Congress and battle for the hearts and minds of the American public, the arms race continues on America's streets, with criminals and law-abiding citizens alike buying up the more than 5 million new handguns made in this country each year. About half the households in the United States have guns, some 200 million firearms, a private arsenal deeply dividing the American public. The controversy pits hunters in the rural part of the country against those who feel hunted down on our city streets. Those who champion the individual's right to own guns against those who say, in the long run, society loses. So we're left with philosophical gridlock, making little headway in curing the underlying causes of violence. In the meantime, the social problems fester, and thousands more are killed or wounded. Casualties of the arms race on America's streets. For CNN Special Reports, I'm Bonnie Anderson.
Code yellow, major trauma. Code yellow, major trauma.
This is the cost of what people think is the right to bear arms.
If I said I needed a gun right now, how soon could you have one for me?
About an hour. And you're how old right now? 19. So you were shot when you were 16? Yeah.
I figure that if I get my hand on my gun, I've got at least an even chance of surviving.
As he began working his way toward us, I thought, I got him, because I always carried a gun in my purse.
I expect to see those guns used in crimes of violence, those that we did not recover.
Chief, you got enough ammunition to start a war. Where's the gun at?
Show me your hand! Everybody down. Now. We're gonna kill you, man. You better stop! You better stop!
We've taken, from my count, about 25 weapons so far this month.
I get them, I sell them, you get them, you sell them. The next man gets caught, I don't give a damn.
They have absolutely no legitimate purpose. Nobody needs an assault weapon.
We'd all be better off if we could get away from the rhetoric and focus on the facts.